Hello, and welcome to my art studio. It's an art studio designed for small spaces. And we are set up here for pastel painting. First, everything is in back position so that Bert can sleep here most of the day. And he also likes being over here so he can look out the window. I have this is actually a lap table, and it moves into different positions. It adjusts in height, and it also has a couple of different tilt positions, and I've set it up to work as my easel. When I'm ready to work, I pull this forward so that it's easier for me to work, and I pull the tray forward because this tray contains some of the pastels that I'm going to be working with. This is a set of pastel pencils, and it might be hard to see, but they have different colors, and each of the pencils has the name of the color written at the bottom. It's just a very basic set. I look forward to upgrading this at some time, but these are pastel pencils. This is a set of soft pastels. It's a beginner set. It is made by, I don't know who, but it's just a very basic set of soft pastels, and I also look forward to upgrading this at some point. But for now, it's a great learning tool, and it didn't cost a whole lot of money. And you can see they're pretty well used. Here this is my newest edition. This is Hard Pastels by Prismacolor. I really love these. And this is what hard pastels look like. They're long sticks. They are very much like soft pastels, except that they are made of they have more clay content, I believe. And it's a little more difficult to smudge, and the colors are a little richer, and I can get into smaller places with these. So this is my newest edition, and I love these, and I will be using these a lot. Prismacolor Premier. And here I just have some chalk for when I'm making an initial sketch. I just use plain old chalk rather than use the expensive stuff. This is a kneaded eraser, and here's an actual one that's being used. It's actually a piece of one because I like working with a small piece. And you knead it, pull it and push it and shove it around and twist it, and then I mold it into a shape if I wanted a little point, or if I wanted a block to do a larger area. And usually you don't break these apart. It's just my system. And then I have, of course, a pencil sharpener and my blending tools. I do use brushes if I'm doing large areas, and also to just gently sweep off any of the loose pastel that's on the painting. So I do use a series of brushes, and I also have these are charcoal pencils. This is not technically charcoal because it's white, but it can't consider it a charcoal pencil. And this is an old set of colored pencils, and I have a couple of black charcoal pencils in here as well. And I'd like to find my blending stump. Here it is. This is a blending stump. It has two pointy ends. You can use either one. Two is convenient because as soon as it gets dirty, it's of very little use to you. but it's used to actually blend in small areas where you want to get in and blend two colors or blend one color, smooth it out. And it also works good to try and get rid of some of the color if you went too far out. This gets sharpened like a pencil does. And this is actually used to sharpen pencils and to sharpen a blending stump. It's actually little sheets of sandpaper. I actually used this, and you would rub this on here and it sharpens the point and also gets rid of, cleans off some of the old pastel that's on here. And there's a whole bunch of sheets stapled onto this holder, and then you just, when one gets used up, you peel it off and throw it away and go on to the next one. So that's a useful tool. Now turning to my paintings here, you can see I have two in progress. The one on the left is the one that I started. That was my sketch, and I study the sketch and I study a lot of pictures. I keep my iPad back here loaded with a whole bunch of pictures so I can be looking at different ones. I don't copy a picture that I found. What I do is I take a series of pictures and I'm getting to know the different features of a bird, what the feathers look like, what the colors are, what the talons look like actually, because they do differ from bird to bird, the tufts, the coloring. So I look at a whole bunch, the position, are they facing forward, to the right, to the left, up, down, and I look at all of those and I put together the different features that I want of a particular bird. And this would be my first sketch. And I work on that like it's a real painting, and I leave it over a couple of days, and I'm working on it over a period of time, and then I decide what I need to change on it. And in this particular case, there were a number of things that I had to change that couldn't be changed on this paper. For one thing, the bird isn't centered properly. Another thing, he's a little too big, so that when I mat it, the edges get obliterated, and this bird is just too big. This is a tufted titmouse, by the way. So this bird is too big, and he's not quite centered well enough, and also I was not happy with how big and thick the branch is. I wanted a thinner one, so I considered that for a time and finally decided it's time to start over. So then I moved to this one, and this one, the size is better, I like the branch better, I like the position of the bird better, so I'm happier with this one. I'm not particularly thrilled with the color of the background. I'm going to change that, make it a little more orange, because the titmouse has a little band of orange underneath the wing, and I want to pick up that orange in the background, and I don't see the colors all that well. I think it's a little too pink, so I want to orange that a little bit, and I can do that on the existing painting. So this one is not done, it's in progress, and it will be a few days until I finish it. And once it's finished, then I leave it for another day or two to decide whether I'm actually finished or if there's something that I really want to tweak. And even if I go back a week later, there's going to be something that I tweak. So, to talk about how I get to the point where I'm painting, when I start, I do the background first. So I have to have an idea in my head of what kind of a background I want. And I use the soft pastels for that because I can make broad strokes and I can do more blending with the background. I kind of like a more decorative background of some sort, not just a plain background. So I do use the soft pastels for that. I use the hard pastel to make my first initial outlines. And I use a very light color, but most artists will use a white or even a pencil. Those won't work for me. So I use a light color, like a light gray generally, because that works well in shading, so I can work it into the painting when I'm done, or as I'm working. And then, so I do use the hard charcoal for my initial outline. Then when I start filling in, I do use the soft pastels, and I blend and I move things around, and then I come in with the hard pastels and work in some of the detail and some of the bolder colors. And finally, I take the pastel pencils and I work in some of the fine details, like the eye. I couldn't do that with a charcoal stick. So like the eye, or some of the feather markings, or the lines that indicate the feathers, the talons, I use pastel pencils for. And then I go back again and I'm going to add more of the soft pastel and the hard pastels, and again the pencil pastels. So that's what I do. I did learn not to use fixative because it darkens the page, and also because you're working on paper, it wrinkles the paper. So I'm done with fixative, but I do have some mats to frame the picture in and some backings to frame it with, and then I use sealing bags that are specifically made for this size with the matting, and the whole thing goes into a sealing bag. A sealed bag or a sealing bag, and that preserves it and also keeps the dust inside instead of losing it in the room. And the other thing I wanted to say is that this particular, my working pastel picture painting, I work in a tray like you would get at a Holiday Inn where they put your bathroom cups and so forth, so that as I'm working, the charcoal makes dust and it gets caught down here. These are the pastels that I'm using most frequently on this particular painting. So I keep them here so I can go back and not have to find the exact same one. And this one here is just clipped onto my table, so I can remove it or move it or whatever I need, change it out, whatever I need to do. And that's my workstation. When I'm done, it just slides back. And Bert's free to come back. Hope you enjoyed my little display of how I get to do my pastel painting.